Hello, everyone. It's your girl, Miracle Sims, and you're watching the GSL Talk Show. Tonight, we're going to be chatting with Mr. Charles Meyer, and he has a testimony that you don't want to miss. So stay tuned.
Miracle Sims, let's go. Miracle Sims, let's go. But I'm not the type of girl that goes. Yeah, it's a miracle, baby. Wishing I would have a one night affair.
Welcome back to the GSL Talk Show. I'm here with Mr. Charles Meyer. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, Miracle. Thank you for having me on.
Yes. Glad to have you here. Welcome to the GSL Talk Show. So, tell us where you're from and a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So I'm based in Tampa, Florida. Grew up here for 20 years, then did a 5-year stint in Nashville, Tennessee, and after that, came back to Florida. So I'm back here in Tampa and running a porn addiction recovery program. So it's a faith-based operation, and we are looking to scale globally.
Awesome. Like staying down south and whatnot. I'm in Georgia. I had like a brief time in Florida. I was in the Orlando
Okay.
area, and then I moved back to Georgia. So I guess we kind of did the same thing, except
Yeah,
you
it's
went a little.
pretty close.
Awesome. What were you doing in Nashville? Just being curious. What was going on up there for
Yeah.
you?
Well, it's actually an interesting story. I first moved up to Nashville because I wanted to be a recording artist at the age of 20.
Okay.
So I had for the couple of years prior to moving up there, I had worked on building up being a recording artist. I built up a multimedia company,
Oh.
but my life was surrounded with addictions. I was consumed by my addictions, and
Mm,
because of that, Nashville was not only the direction that I felt forced to go, but it felt like the only option that I had as a way to get a second chance at life and to really
mm,
leave the past behind. But ultimately, my problems ended up following me. I didn't get to pursue anything with being a recording artist, and it
mm,
was kind of like my entire life had just been pulled out from under me, and I had to start from scratch. But all I had was all the bad, and now none of the good. Um,
mm.
and then eventually my life got flipped upside down and got free from the addictions. Found a beautiful wife, and now we have a beautiful baby boy together. So life is just going really well right now, and I love what I get to do every single day.
Awesome. My apologies about that. But yeah, sounds great, man, in regards to the I guess the outcome today, right? I'm sorry to hear that you didn't, reach your recording artist dreams. I hope that you could still, you know, do your thing. Is that something you still want to
Yeah.
embark on?
No, I mean, well, actually, that's a good clarifying question. I do definitely see in the future that I'd love to get back into music, but it was actually the best thing ever that I didn't get into that industry.
Mm,
I see that there's a lot of darkness in there right now, and we do need a lot more light. But at the
definitely.
same time, the reasons that I wanted to get in there was to escape myself. I was trying
Mm,
to force this image of who I wanted to be seen as,
mm,
and I wanted to be seen as successful because I believed I was a failure. I wanted to be seen as
mm,
worthy because I believed I was unworthy. I wanted attention and to be loved and to belong because I didn't believe that I had any of those things or that I was
mm,
worthy of any of those things. And so for me, if I had have got that, it would have been the same escape that I believe we've seen uh, time after time, where someone gets super rich or super famous, and then they lose themselves, and they end up,
mm,
maybe they end up leaving us behind, right? And it's like,
mhm,
that's not what I want. And I know that
mm,
that's exactly what I probably would have headed for if I had have found success doing the thing that I was never supposed to be doing in the first place, really
mm,
because it was coming from fear. And I didn't have a heart full of love. I had a heart full of darkness and hatred and bitterness and anger, and
mm.
addiction was at the center of all of it.
Wow. Okay. I mean, well, you can always go the independent route and try to stay out of the stuff
Oh
that's
yeah.
going on. I'm with you. I definitely can see
Oh
a lot of
yeah.
things in mainstream media. I'm at the point now where I'm like, hey man, if I don't get the mainstream media accolades and whatnot, I'm totally fine with that. Whatever the Lord wants me to do ultimately
There
is
you
what I'm
go.
trying to focus on these days. And so who knows, now that you've had this change of heart, God could use that talent for, his glory, So look, be on the lookout for his recording or album too. You
Absolutely.
never know, right? You never know. But I mean, we gotta touch on quite a few things there. I mean, but first I want to
Absolutely.
hear, how was your what was your childhood like? And you're talking about a lot of darkness and addiction and things of that nature. Like, I guess paint this picture for us of how you got to that particular point before we get into obviously that big elephant in the room, right?
Oh, yeah, let's do it. So, I mean, really what it comes down to is much like most of the people that I've been around, we grew up in either homes that were just decent. They were good with good parents,
Mhm,
or there were some aspects that were great and other aspects that weren't as great. And typically, it's like there's you kind of fall somewhere in between there, right? And that was where I ended up, was falling in between the cracks of having a very decent home, but there was things I liked and things that I didn't like, and I didn't want to be a part of life itself. I wasn't willing to go through the struggles of growing into becoming a family,
mm,
because um, I felt like my parents had a lot of things that they were really great at, and they taught me things that I'm forever thankful for. But there were other things that they weren't taught, and I believe that it's due to a generational gap in the information that was available to us at the time.
mm,
Because in the day and age that I was raised, which I mean, I'm only 26 right now, but back in the day, I mean, we didn't have Facebook growing up. I grew up right around the time that technology started taking off. And
mhm,
so I watched the whole world around me go from very happy, imaginative, joyful people to all of a sudden everyone's becoming zombie like, getting buried in
mm,
technology. And little
mhm,
did I realize that I was in the same slow burning fire with every single person that was going down on that ship. Um,
mm,
and so I've watched how we've become a world that is very emotionally dysregulated. We become a world that doesn't understand how to process what's going on inside of us. God gave us a
mm,
very rich inner world, but we don't understand what's going inside because we're too busy looking at these phones all the time. And I think that
mm,
if we really take a look at what was going on in each and every one of our childhoods, it's that we grew up in a very weird time in the world where technology took over, and technology enslaved pretty much everyone to these portals that, and then we sit down after a long day and we stare into these portals on the walls, and really simply to say that I didn't like the life that I was living in. I didn't want to participate in it because I didn't like getting hurt by other people. I grew
mm,
up as a very victim type of mentality, and I didn't know how to handle emotions, and I didn't know how to process emotions because I was never taught, and my family line was never taught those things, or that that's even a thing. We
mm,
were all taught you got to be tough, and you got to stay tough, and you're
mm,
obligated to be tough. And I just don't believe
mm,
that that's how God has called us to be as a church body, is to
mhm,
just be tough all the time. Like, yeah, there are times you got to be tough, but
mhm,
you also got a heart that you got to live from, and you can't let that heart die, because that's the heart that God gave you.
mm,
And so the not just having a great family, but the community that I grew up in was also great. But when things are great, things are great. When things are not great, they weren't great. And so there was times that I felt bullied when I was in friend groups, or that I was in church groups, and I would get kicked out of communities because I didn't
mm,
fit in. And so this was another area that my life sort of fell into cracks,
mm,
and I became one of the few that felt like I didn't have a single friend group that I ever really fit in. It's like everyone
mm,
found their identity. They found their thing. The goths found the goths. The nerds found the nerds. The jocks found the jocks. I didn't
mm,
have any of that. I didn't fit in anywhere. And
mhm,
so I became exactly that. And I started finding more people like that, which is exactly what got me into um, growing up as this person that I really hid behind a mask of who God truly wanted me to become as a man,
mm,
and as who He made me to be as Charles. Um, and I chose to live as this fake person for so long because it was safer to protect myself that way. And
Mhm.
I just happened to find the other people that they were also fine with that too. But it led to things like pornography and drugs and drinking and partying, and it never satisfied. So one of the things that was really big in my history was a series of heartbreaks where every single person was the one, and then that person breaks my heart, and then I found the
Mm,
one, and then that person breaks my heart. And I was
mm,
so deluded in my own version of reality because I was trying so hard to fill that God void with everything except God. And so I never was able to make peace with myself, and I never saw myself as someone who could actually become more than what I believed the world had told me I was worth.
mm,
And those were the things that really contributed to why I grew up how I did. And ultimately, I have become a better person because of everything I've walked through. You know, I can either let it define me, or I can choose to take control of that narrative and stop letting everyone else write the story for me. So I chose to, over time, like as I went through my healing journey, I chose to take control of that story and to take control of my life and to stop allowing life's situations and circumstances to be something that told me who I am, and I just roll over and say, you know what, world, you're right. I am a terrible person. I am unworthy. I am unloved. I am, not enough. I
mm,
chose to take control of that narrative and say, well, what does God say about who I am? Who does He see me as? And how can I keep speaking those things over my life? And is
mhm,
it going to empower me to do that? Or is it going to hurt me? And really, I
mm,
chose to stick with it because I saw it empowered me and it made me a better person. And it showed me how to love myself. And God showed me how I can love other people. And that's really who I've become today, is someone that all I want to do is live from a heart of love and service and thankfulness, because
mm,
I do not deserve this life. And that's not in like a self-defeating kind of way. Like, I'm so grateful that I get to live this life that I never thought I would live, because
mm,
of how I grew up. And I believe that this same abundance in life is available to anyone who's willing to seek truth and to ask for
mm.
persistently, for God to reveal Himself and for truth to be made known in your life. Um, I believe that God's guiding each and every one of us, and the way that He's guided me is the way that if we just ask, seek, and knock long enough and hard enough, like, the doors will be open to you. You know?
Mm, mhm. Man, uh, so there's so much that I can relate to and that resonates in what you just shared. Again, thanks for being open and honest about all of those different things. I'm right there with you when it comes to the whole technology thing, man. It can be a blessing and a curse, right? And so, it's a blessing to have some, wide access to, meeting people and all those different things. But at the same time, it's the curse of, everything that's out there. Of course, everybody ain't good, and so it's just, I totally understand that. And it's so funny when you say, oh, back in my 20s or whatever the case is. I'm sure people probably looking like, what do you mean, like you're like 22 now, what is it? I mean,
Yeah.
you look great or whatever. I don't know how old you are, but probably people probably think the same about me, like, well, how old are you? When I've been like, oh, back in my 20s. um but yeah, man, again, yeah, there's a lot that, again, that resonates. I guess the journey that God, took you on to see that, okay, even when you try all the different things, like you said, try to fill the God hole with all everything else, and then realizing that, like, I was about to say Solomon. Yeah, like Solomon said to us in, like, Proverbs and all those, like,
Yep.
it's all vanity at the end of the day, right? It's nothing is going to fulfill that void that is only for Christ. And so, it's good to always hear like other people's journey and stuff, to know that, okay, I went through this thing too, and at least, again, to, like you said, be grateful that, hey, you made it out, right? And now you can sit here and tell the testimony, when a lot of people, they unfortunately don't make it. So I mean, obviously, I know there's much more to hear, in regards to your story and whatnot, but let me bring up something you said earlier, right? So earlier you were saying, oh, such and such, and I started a porn, and then you paused, and then you finished saying the rest of it. So I was like, but for anybody that might have had to just like caught the just the word porn before you pause and said the rest of what your company is, they might have been like, oh, what's going on with this guy, right? But again, I think it's good to talk about these different things. I know that we've had, former guests to come in and share their perspectives. And so I had another gentleman that came in and shared about, you know, I don't know if he came from the porn addiction per se, but he was had a a movement centered around this as well to help men and whatnot. But then we also had a human trafficking survivor that shed a whole new light on the porn industry to pretty much share that, hey, the people that you're watching, most of them are trafficked. And that honestly should shift our hearts and minds with people that are, watching these things, because I over the years I've seen some porn. I'm not gonna sit here and act like I've never seen it or whatever. And that was something that I noticed. Like I would watch and I'd be like, once you get past the whole getting turned on thing, then you're like paying attention to like what's happening. So I'll be looking at people's eyes. Maybe that's the actor in me. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking deeper or whatever as I'm watching certain stuff. And so I would notice, like, for example, looking in people's eyes and be like, "Dude, she's not really into it. Like, this is weird, whatever." And then years later, I meet this again human trafficking survivor. She's sharing that part, and it's just, I think that was like a light bulb moment for me. It like clicked that perhaps that's why that girl that I saw or whatever wasn't into it, because maybe she was forced to do that or whatever the case is. And and stuff started to make more sense and stuff. So I mean, I guess, how did this thing start for you? Like, I mean, obviously you're on the other side and you made an amazing company that I'm sure is helping others that dealt with it. But I guess let's start with how it started. I mean, a lot of people were introduced in young age and whatnot. I don't know how it was for you, but um feel free
Yeah,
to, whatever you're comfortable with sharing.
absolutely.
Would love to know.
Well, so it started out very similarly to most folks. I've spoken to thousands of men and women even that have all had very similar stories. So I'm, you know, thank you God that it wasn't my story that I had to go through like molestation or anything like that as an introduction to the world of sex.
Mm-hmm.
But I did have a friend that at the time we were like 11, 12. We thought we were on top of the world, and I just got in a computer because I wanted to start studying coding. Um,
Mm,
but it turned into just me using it like a kid and playing games. And my friend decides to type in SEX, and he starts giggling, and I'm like, "What is that?" But he didn't actually hit enter. But now, great, now my parents got to have a conversation with me about what is SEX. And so that
mm-hmm.
was crazy to me. Like that was when my world, like, huh, people do that to each other. That's when things started to really change. And
Mm,
so I didn't realize how impactful 3 letters on a keyboard would be to my life. But what that turned into was I started to get curious, and I started to
mm,
ask questions. And this is around the time that hormones really started to kick in. And so there's those two things, plus the fact that I'm already someone who is in a lot of very deep pain that I didn't know how to deal with. And I was trying to keep it down, and I was trying to escape the world. I was trying to escape into video games. I spent most of my childhood just hiding away in my room and in video games and watching TV, and I didn't even like to sleep. I was so uh, leave it to say, like, I was so controlled. Um, I was paralyzed by fear of
mm,
being in this world that I was looking for any possible way to escape, right?
mm.
And that ultimately was a big thing that led up to me starting to dig into what is sex, what
Mhm.
is porn.
Well, can I ask you something? Like, so what was it that got you to that place of being afraid of life and things of that nature? I mean, because you told us you come from a great home and different things of that nature, and I get that everything that looks great and perfect is not. So I do understand that part, but I think I mean, I guess I'm just asking on the behalf of other people that might wonder, like, well, what was it that drove him to feel that, that fear that you mentioned?
Ooh.
Because I noticed you mentioned it a few times now
Yeah.
that you kind of.
Okay. That's a great question. I
Is
actually
that a
don't
little
know.
bit?
Maybe
Oh,
I've been
sorry
asked
if
that
it's too much.
before. No, that's a great
Mm,
question. So this actually, I think it comes down to my core trauma, one of my core
mm,
traumas, my trauma, right? But point being, this was an experience that I had that controlled me, and it happened when I was about 4 years old, where my mom took me to church,
mm,
and she dropped me off at the Sunday school room so that she could go and like do her thing at church and I'm just gonna hang out, have fun with the kids, and all that good
Mhm.
stuff, because like 4-year-olds do, right? But
Right.
I I missed apparently when she said, "All right, see ya. I'll be back. Bye." I didn't hear that. I didn't see that, and I was a happy
Mhm.
boy. But then when the door closes and I turn around and I can't find her, and I look around and I can't
Mm.
see anyone that I know, I freaked out. And so at the age of
Wow.
4, this felt like an eternity of separation from my mom. And after that,
Mm.
I closed my heart off, and this was when all the victimization began. This was when
Wow.
all of it began. I'm talking I became a closed off person. I became angry towards my parents. I became very
Mm.
distant from them. I wouldn't trust them with anything. I
Mm.
became separated from all of people because I didn't trust anyone. I wouldn't let anyone comfort me in that moment. I wouldn't play with
Mm.
any of the kids in that moment. Um, and so it's so funny, but at the same time not really, but it's funny looking back on it and realizing that wow, the course of my life was impacted by one event at 4 years old that was literally nothing. It was
Mm.
everything to me back then, but like
Mhm.
she was still there, just I
Yeah.
didn't know that she was coming back. But that moment that I closed my heart off was due to the feeling of, "Oh, man, I've been abandoned. Oh, no, I'm gonna die
Mm.
alone. I'm forever lost. No
Wow.
one will ever know me. I can't let anyone in. It's risking my safety and security." And
Mm.
that was what had controlled me for so long, and it caused me to literally, at a young age, I was looking to be in relationships with girls when I was, like, 5, 7, 8. Kids are supposed to be having fun. Here I am trying to imitate marriage because of
Mm.
this void that I had because I closed my heart off to the world.
Mm.
Um, and that's where I really allowed myself to continue to be a victim. I was not only told it by people because I was so scared to open my heart and just be me with people.
Mm.
But being this fake person as a child made me a crazy person to be around, and that's what would get me kicked out of places, and that's why
Mm.
people didn't want to be my friend, and that's why I couldn't find a people group that I could be with. It was
Mm.
because of this fear of rejection and loneliness and abandonment that I wasn't willing to face in myself, even at the
Mm.
age of 4. And so going on and on and on throughout life, I hit the age of 12. That's when I stumble on porn. Nowadays, funny enough, people are stumbling on porn around the ages of like 8 and 9, and it's just getting younger and younger.
I was
But
gonna say that. Yeah. I'm
yeah,
sorry. I didn't mean to cut you out.
yeah,
Well, one, that's few. I guess there's a few things I want to share with you. One, I think is very interesting, the testimony that you just shared, because I'm the elementary coordinator at the church that I work at and go to, and so this is something to consider. And I might have to take this back to the staff, and not to be like just sharing your business, but I'm saying like being considerate of those younger kids. You know what I'm saying, and stuff like that. That's something to keep in mind. So thank you. I appreciate you sharing that and stuff, because we're always trying to make sure we're providing a safe and loving space, but at the same time I could get how traumatic that could be. And so I think, I guess I never even thought about that. So again, I thank you for sharing that part.
yeah,
And then even what you just said, I wanted to definitely piggyback on that, where you said that, yeah, I mean, it is getting younger and younger these days. I mean, we know what all is going on in the world. Like I said, I tell people all the time that I've been very hesitant about whether my son going to go to school or not. I'm thinking we're probably just going to do virtual for a while and just go from there, because he's 5 now, and I know we got to do the school thing, but it's just like it's a lot going on, and people are exposing kids to everything right now. You won't even want to know what I saw this morning about, like, this I guess couple that is took the baby to that special parade in June. Y'all
mm,
already know what it is. And then and they it's and it's a baby though, you know what I'm saying, like already
yeah,
exposed. You're already exposed to all the things. So yeah, like you said, I mean, it's a blessing, right, that you weren't exposed until 11, so to God be glory for that. Because yeah, that unfortunately my story has molestation in the background and whatnot, and
mm,
I had to been like 3 or 4 or whatever. And so you know stop exposing kids to this, but whatever. Okay, so let's go back to you. Let's go back to you and what you're saying. So 11-year-old, your friend introduced the word sex to you, and then from there, obviously, so was it that for like you searched it, he searched it as well, and then you guys saw some
So
things, or you just
so
were
he did
curious
his
about the word and then
thing.
you looked later?
Yeah, he didn't end up actually like hitting enter,
Mm.
but that was when my parents did have to like have that conversation with me. So great, we
Oh,
have the
okay.
conversation, but then that's when I'm already a very like rejection filled, anxious, fearful, controlled escape artist, right?
Mm,
And I mean, I didn't have a childhood because of those things. So even though I grew up in a great family, I was never able to receive it because I never felt like family. I never
mm,
felt connected to anybody because I had closed off. And
mm,
so, um, really, where things took a turn was when I actually got in a really bad fight with my sister. And it was tough because all these things that I just mentioned about like how terrible of a child I was. Um, I mean, yeah, I get it. That's not who I was supposed to be, but all those things controlled me, and so
mm,
that's who I was.
mhm,
And because they controlled me, I didn't know how to control my temper. I didn't know how to process emotions, and so I was angry at the world. I was angry at everyone. I was angry at myself, and and so when I got in this fight with my sister, it wasn't good. It was not a good fight. It wasn't pretty.
mm,
In fact, it was a very pivotal moment once again,
mm,
and that was when things really took a big turn. And I've only just started opening up about this part of my story because I mean, it involves more than just me now.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and
Was it
so,
physical or just like an
yeah,
argument or?
it was a physical fight, and
Mm,
it was heartbreaking because I love my sister today. We love each other.
mm,
We're in great contact, great communication.
that's
Um,
good.
but at the time, I mean, we did not like each other, and
Mm,
so the the result of what had happened was my family never looked at me the same way. And so here I
mm,
am, age of 12. I had just stumbled on porn, just discovered it, and then this happens, and I'm already a very anxiety filled, fear filled, like crazy child, already super rejected by the world. And now my family rejects me. My family views me differently. All right, well, I guess that's it. I guess I'm just absolutely nobody could ever love me. And
mm,
so I ended up actually not only diving into porn, like I really got into it at that point, but then I got a really beautiful girlfriend at the time, and we were only like we were only 13, but she was everything to me. And then I go and cheat on her, and I'm like, well, I'm looking back now, I'm like, it's just kids, but at the time when you're in the moment, it feels like there's nothing else that matters. And it was so real to me at the time. I'm like, this is so
okay.
serious. And so, I was trying to fill this void with porn, with relationships, and it didn't work. And so I needed more relationships. And so I cheated on her. And I realized eventually when I got caught that I had hurt her. And I'd hurt a lot of people that were involved in supporting us, and supporting both people actually. So, that was another pivotal moment for me in childhood where I continued to just progress deeper and deeper in my self hatred because now that I had hurt other people again, great.
Mm,
Church was my last sanctuary. I didn't feel like I had groups outside of church. I didn't feel like I had my home, didn't feel like I had friends. Now I don't even have church because all this happened with church friend groups. Um,
oh,
And so, because of those events that transpired, I literally took on this identity that, great, I'm just a monster. All I can ever do is hurt people. This must be why nobody accepts me or loves me. This must be why I'm rejected. And
mm,
so I chose consciously to allow pornography to be my go to because I
mm,
never wanted to hurt anyone ever again. Even though I continued to watch pornography and say that I'm never gonna hurt anyone ever again, I still continued to pursue relationships because I was talking out both sides of my mouth there. I was saying one thing and doing another. I'm never gonna hurt anyone again, and here I am still pursuing relationships. and at the same time saying, well, I don't want to have porn in my life. I don't want to have this at all. And so there is so many divides. I couldn't make up my mind. I couldn't just be one person,
Mm,
because I barely knew who I was. I couldn't even differentiate what was me or what was anxiety or what was fear or what was anger. To me, I
mm,
was all of it, and that's what made me, in my mind, that terrible person. Um, and it's so funny because parents these days have so little control over their children and the influences that are around their children these days. It can be very very tough to like really raise a family. Now that I'm actually raising a family, it can be very tough to control the environment and surround children with the kind of influences that you want them to have around. And not even the home is safe with all these dang portals everywhere, right? I mean,
mm.
we
Yeah.
have things like YouTube for kids, but even videos there have been found to still be very unsafe, very harmful, and people are always finding ways to sneak these little things in. And I mean,
Mm,
yeah, I did some of this to myself, but at the
mm,
same time, it's not like anything around me was helping. No, like,
mm,
and that was really a big part of the story, was that later on in life, after I've gone through years and years of these cycles, and the problem just continued to get deeper and deeper and darker, um, I started to finally realize, oh, I can talk to people about my problems. I didn't know that. So I start
mm,
talking to people about, like, guys, I'm not doing well. I'm feeling depressed, feeling like got some suicidal thoughts going on, guys, and they would
mm,
blow me off. And it took me a while to realize that the people I had surrounded myself with were not good people. It's
mm,
not that they didn't think that they were good people, but they didn't know God, and so they didn't have love in their hearts.
mm,
Um, and there, sure, maybe there's a lot of debate on, well, they can still be good people. You just shouldn't be dumping your stuff on them. But I mean, if someone says help,
mhm,
then do something, right? But I was
yeah,
not surrounded by people that understood what the word help really means. And I
mm,
didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know how to say help. I didn't know where to look for help, because now I'm opening up about it, but I didn't know who to trust. And so it
mm,
was really just the blind leading the blind. The people who were helping me gave me answers that took me further down the road I was trying to get off of. I
mm,
had become so controlled by this life that I had built, and ultimately it was a house of cards. I was trying to protect myself, and that's really part of what ties back into, like, even me doing recording artist stuff. Um, was just an evolution of the same identity that I was trying to get away from.
mm,
The I am a monster, the I am a reject, I am a failure, I
mm.
am unworthy and unloved. These were
Oh,
all the
wow.
things that defined me, and I
Mm,
couldn't get away from them.
wow. Man, so well, clearly you're away today, right? So how did this happen, right? Did you have a come to Jesus moment? Like, I mean, because I
Actually,
mean,
yes.
yeah. How did that go for
Yeah.
you? Like, we would love, love to
Yeah.
hear.
So, I mean, I've told this story from a few different angles. I think it's time to tell it from a new angle. So this will be a first.
Okay.
There was a point in time where I had a really amazing group of church friends where they saw this good side of me finally. But then there was the rest of my life that is everything that I just described. But when this group of church friends came into my life, they became family to me, and they became the ones that I could trust and that I could be real with,
Mm,
but only to the extent that I was in control of the conversations and I was in control of what they think about me, what they feel about me. I was the one who had to be in charge there. And I didn't realize just how wrong that is, for me to be the one who has a death grip on the way a relationship looks and what people think about me. And I was trying to control so many details that are not my responsibility, and I was just scared. Looking back, I was just scared of being hurt. I was scared of being kicked out again. I'd been betrayed and removed my entire life. And even though I knew that they loved me genuinely, I didn't know how to change who I was and show up as a person that could be vulnerable and honest with them fully
Mm.
honest, not to the extent that I'm just being vulnerable and giving information, but vulnerable where there's emotion attached, where there's some form of authenticity where I could say genuinely, like, guys, I'm going through it right now, and I don't know what to do. And so this was kind of in between my leave to Tampa and before I got to Nashville, where I started speaking up about, guys, I need help, and no one listened. And
Mm.
so this was the introduction to my church group, and to my family that I would cling to, my church family. So I moved to Nashville and I start speaking up about my problems, and like they keep following me no matter where I go. And as I'm speaking up, I'm not finding answers, but so I visit Tampa, and I keep visiting Tampa very often because it was the only place I felt safe. I literally spent so much money just just on flights and driving back down to my hometown because I wanted to be there. I felt like
Mm.
Nashville was a mistake for a long time because I didn't have anyone. I didn't have anything. I didn't know how to let go of Tampa so I could actually receive what God had for me in Nashville.
Mm.
But so that was where I started connecting with more people that would say things like, "Yeah, so I work for this group of people that prays for people, and they say they see healing from sexual trauma, from addiction, from trafficking, from crazy things, really crazy things." We could definitely get into that at a later time. But really simply to say, these guys dealt with the worst of the worst in terms of level of brokenness, and so I'm like, that's where I need to go for help. And so I
Mhm.
started meeting with these guys, and that began my journey to freedom.
Mm.
But it was a bumpy road because I wasn't through the woods yet up in Nashville. I had to still live up there. And so even though I was visiting Tampa every now and then, now it's like I was living three lives: the life where I'm in Tampa, the life where I'm in Nashville, the life where I'm getting help. But when my home was in Nashville, that was where everything was controlling me.
Mm.
Um, because like at that point I had bought my own home. I had an amazing job in corporate, and even though I eventually ended up leaving because I realized I was very unfulfilled there, um, I didn't have anything that I felt was actually helping me in Nashville. I didn't have anyone that I felt was actually helping me. My friend groups were an absolute train wreck. All I wanted to do was party, and I had enough of it, but I didn't know what else to do, so I kept partying. Um, and over time, I continued to meet with the ministry that helped me, and I met with them virtually.
Mm.
Um, but I continued to go through the ringer with the addictions, and that was when one night when the pandemic, like we're in the hit and we're in the middle of lockdown, and there's cities burning left and right, and I go down this crazy conspiracy trail because everyone's like throwing up all these conspiracies about what's going on with COVID for real, and
Mhm.
they start talking about all these things, and I'm like, okay, cool. Maybe I can learn something here. So I start going down these rabbit holes, and I start finding out more information about like um, just how controlled the whole world really is, and that was what got me into looking into things um, like how much the government is paying attention to what we're doing online, and how much corporations are controlling our data, and how the whole goal is like to steal my time and my attention. And so I thought to myself things like, wow, so you're telling me that everything that I'm doing is going to a job where I work for someone to build their empire, and my whole life is spent just doing that. But then when I'm not working for someone else, building someone else's empire and someone else's dreams, then you're saying I'm going home just to consume more content that builds other people's dreams, and that I have no control over this because I'm literally just a zombie being controlled by these portals. And
Mhm.
I mean, as weird as it might sound to call technology portals, I mean,
Mm.
really, we're just getting sucked into another world. The brain doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's digital. It's all real to the brain. And I
Mhm.
know that I can say this for a fact. God cares about our thought life. He cares about our inner world. And
Mhm.
so when we're allowing that imagination center to have real estate in it from corporations that can play a little jingle and we know instantly who that jingle is for, like God wants all of me. He doesn't want me to be divided with all these other idols and all these other things that control me. He wants me to walk in total freedom. But
Mm,
I was in chains. I was a slave to my addictions, and I was a dead man walking. And so even though I was getting help, I was still stuck in these chains because there was a lot to unpack. I had a lot
mm,
of bitterness that I had to let go of. I had a lot of people to forgive. I needed to ask for forgiveness, and I needed to reconcile a lot of relationships. And I went on what I call this apology tour, where I sincerely went to people that I felt that I had hurt and that I had betrayed and that maybe I had lied to. Um, and I went to everyone. I didn't leave anyone off this list. And I started asking for forgiveness for the things that I believed I had done that had hurt them, and for where I had been inauthentic, or where I had not shown up as the person that they needed at the time.
mm,
Um, and I really wanted to be free, so I was willing to do whatever it took to get clean. Um, and this was a method that I hadn't tried before because I had tried everything from porn blockers to willpower and discipline. I tried screaming Bible verses and praying to God, God, take the addiction away from me. And I definitely got a lot to say about that, but
I've
you
been
know,
there.
yeah, and it's like I tried all the wrong things. I tried all of them because I was willing to do whatever it takes. But I never tried walking through the season of actual inner healing and dealing with what was going on inside and
Mm,
allowing God to penetrate my brokenness and my hardened soil of the garden of my soul. I had never
mm,
allowed him to plant love into my life. Um, but when I finally started opening up and doing these things that helped me to lighten that load of all the guilt and the shame and the just all the things, right? I started working with God and with these ministries that were helping me to figure out what do I actually need to do to get free, where I'm not just brute forcing my way through life. And there was this
mm,
little voice in my head that kept on telling me that if I keep trying things my own way, I will be dead in a ditch. And I already believed it, but it was like no matter how hard I fought to try and do things my way, I knew what that ending was gonna be. So I was I was willing to do whatever it took to get free, and that's why I was
mhm,
willing to go on this apology train, this apology tour, and reach out to people that I didn't want to talk to at the time. And I was willing to make those adjustments because I knew I had to do whatever it took. Um,
mm,
and one of the things that really fueled me on was my now wife. So really what happened was when I gave God my life in the middle of that pandemic, and I go down these rabbit holes and I figure out, oh my goodness, all these things are controlling me. That was where I met God, and I said, God, you're gonna have to wheel my life back. He introduces me to my wife a few days later. We don't
mm,
stop talking ever since then. And so on the way that I had started to get help, um, he introduces Megan into my life, and so it's like now there's an additional thread to this story where
mm,
I've got this conversation thread that I've got going on with Megan, and we're hitting it off, we're doing great, and I'm getting help on another thread, and I'm still deep in the addictions, and I'm living in two cities. And there was this battle for my soul that I talk about just in other places, where it was
mm,
like I wanted to change, but I didn't want to change, and I wanted to change, but I didn't want to change, and I was going from rock bottom to rock bottom to rock bottom. And I kid you not, it was like I kept on saying, "This is it. This is the last time. I'm done." Whether it was the time that I was digging through the trash to find drugs, I was so desperate to get high, or the times that
mm,
I woke up in a pile of my own vomit, being blackout drunk in a random parking lot at 3 a.m., screaming out to the world, "I want to die."
mm,
It was like no matter how many rock bottoms I hit, I was never um I was never actually done until God started working on my heart and he started showing me that there's better ways to live and there's more that I can have in my life than what I had settled for. And so I started like getting help and I start talking to Megan and I'm living this double life, but I started to see this weird light at the end of the tunnel where it wasn't Megan that I was putting my faith, hope, and trust in. It was in this possibility for a better life if I just gave a little more effort. because up until that point where um, I had really started to make these changes, there was a lot of these rock bottoms, and I eventually I went around the circles enough times to start asking, what's really going on here? Why is it that I keep on trying to change, but then I never actually do? Why do I keep doing things my way? And I all it took was 1 second to wise up and start asking myself questions. And then it was just over time, more and more little raindrops of what I believe now is God. And he was saying, my son, what are you doing with your life? What
Mm,
are you throwing away? And really, one of the big kickers that really helped fuel me, and now this didn't last very long, but it was a big kicker in my life. And this was what got me free from like suicidal thoughts. Um, was that I had gone on a really crazy drug trip. I did a lot of mushrooms, and I will say I don't advocate for drugs, but I did a lot of drugs back in the day, and so I actually saw myself falling into my grave over and over and over, and I was surrounded by my loved ones. And I could just see them staring down at me. And I heard this one question being asked over and over in my head: was it worth it? And that question just rang so dang loud, and I started to believe that I had actually died. And so
mm,
I jump out of bed and I start throwing up all of the drugs that I had taken. And in that moment, that was a powerful decision for me because I decided. Oh, still there? Looks like it's cutting out. Here you are.
see,
Yeah, I decided
mhm,
to that I wanted to live. That was what really helped kick me into gear to say, you know what? This is a rock bottom that I'm willing to take action on.
mm,
Now this was just before the pandemic, so when everything hit, um, like I wanted to be alive by that point. I wanted to, but I didn't know how to change. I just knew that I wanted to be alive.
mm,
And so I was able to start making these little changes, but it came with a lot of work, a lot of effort. And so, kind of like puzzle piecing this together. I went through all these crazy rock bottoms, all these shameful, depressing moments of my life where there was this massive pivotal change here, and then this other massive pivotal change. And then on the other hand, I'm also saying, but I'm still not free yet. So am I actually really getting free or not? And even though I've got all these things going for me in the future, why is it that I still cannot change? And this was really where it all led up to this one moment. All these things, all these threads that I've just laid out, they all collided, and they collided in the most beautiful, God glorifying way that I never thought would happen to me. I thought that everyone else would get a God moment except me. And so the pandemic briefly lifts for a moment. It briefly lifts, and this church opens up. So I go to the church, and I just worship my eyes out. I worship my heart out, and I cry my eyes out.
mhm,
And this goes on for 2 hours, and I'm like screaming, wreathing in pain. I'm shaking, but it was a good pain this time because it was all the pain that I had suppressed, this lifetime of shame, this lifetime of guilt, this lifetime of depression and sadness and anger. And
mm,
all of the things that I had done, walking through forgiveness and reconciliation, those were the things that led up to this moment where I was willing to step up for my life finally and stand before God in that moment and rip off that false identity and say, God, I need you and I need your help. And I cannot do this alone because I've tried absolutely everything. And there's a beautiful woman out there that loves me and she cares about me. And I want to be with her and I want to start a family and I want to live a big life and I want to do amazing things in my life. And I don't believe anymore that I can do this without you. And
mm,
so that was where all these things collided. And that was what my heart was crying out to God. um, and it was really something that I never saw happening to me. I thought everyone else, again, was gonna get that kind of moment except me. But by the
mm,
time it was done, I was my voice was so destroyed. I couldn't talk. But I knew that I was free. I
mm,
knew it. I knew it. Because I'd never experienced anything like that before. And so
mm,
later that day, I go back to my home and I start smoking weed with my friends, and I can't feel high. I couldn't. And I couldn't stop talking about Jesus either. And I said, you know what? I don't need this anymore. And I took it and I gave it to the other friends, and I walked away from it for good. And I that's how I knew I was free, was because I
Mm,
went back to the old way of living. I'm like, ugh, that's nasty. I don't like that anymore. I don't want that
mm,
in my life, because that's not who I am
mm,
anymore. And really, like, that's the center of what I teach people today, is that if you want to really be free from any sort of addiction or problem that you have in your life, you got to stop identifying with it, and you got to stop
mm,
confirming that it is something you identify with by everything else in your life.
mhm,
It and so it was this journey of reconciliation, not just with other people, but by not reconciling. All life was doing was reflecting like a mirror back to me the things that I didn't want to see in myself. It was never about anyone else. It was
mm,
always about me and my willingness to show up for my life, because that's the free will that God gave me. The choice to change, the choice to own up for my mistakes, the choice to make a different choice.
mm,
And it was that ultimate choice, I believe, of reaching this place of deep conviction inside of myself, where I'm no longer identifying with the dead man, and instead I identify as the new creation. And that was when God was able to actually do a deep work in my heart and set me free from the sexual shame and the guilt and the condemnation and the drugs and all those things. They fell off because I
mm,
was done being controlled. I didn't feel rejected anymore. I felt accepted. And it was in Nashville that I was then able to find my church family. God literally brought me into my church family full of hundreds of people the very next week that I got free. And the
mm,
first thing that I thought is, how come I never saw these guys before now? Because I had been to that church several times, but how come I never found them? I believe that if I had shown up before then, I would have continued to stay the exact same dead man.
mm,
And so part of this, I believe, was God's timing. And part of it, I also believe, was the fact that I never would have been able to find them because I did not identify like them. And so I never saw myself as one of them. So I never knew what they looked like. So I never knew what to look for.
mm.
But ain't that how life goes?
Wow, man, what an amazing testimony! Like this, again, so many things there, but I believe that you may have even set some people free with that testimony, and I'm not surprised that that little turbulence or whatever was going on in the midst of it. That's how
Yeah.
the enemy do when you get real good. You know what I mean? So I'm not even
Oh
worried about
yeah.
that. But yeah, man. Actually, you reminded me of something I was studying this morning with the daily inspiration and whatnot. I was pretty much talking about like hardened hearts this morning, and ultimately one thing that I was noticing in one of the verses as I was reading it was talking about pretty much how when your heart is hard, then your eyes and your ears and like everything's affected, and of course you hear things a certain way, you see things a certain way. So even when you share at the end of your testimony there about you never saw the true family and friends and things that you had surrounding you until you were free, and I guess your heart was softened to I guess God and his ways. So I mean, like I said, man, earlier, to God be the glory that you are on the other side and that you're here to be able to tell this amazing testimony. I know that people have all kinds of other experiences when it comes to the drugs or whatever, their addictions, whatever their addiction may be. Again, some people don't make it, and so I feel honored to be hearing your testimony today, and and sharing in different days like that. I mean, I know you have an amazing I guess, would you say company or nonprofit? You could tell me how you defined it, but um, so now
Yeah, it's
that
a
you
company.
made it company, okay, and so you made it through, and now you have this company that is addressing this issue, and so I would love to hear more about that and what you have going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, really, what it's turned into today is a global movement, and it's centered around this mission to end fatherlessness in the households around the
Mm,
world, because of the connection that porn has to men who are very sexual creatures, and the way that that men become uh, who they're created to be. Right? Like we have God the Father. I believe that that's who He's making men to be, is fathers. But
Mm,
how can a man be a good father if he doesn't know what a good father looks like? And so he's left to his own vices, and that's
mhm,
where, if it's not pornography, then it's drugs. If it's not drugs, then it's food. Who cares what it is? But for
mhm,
me, I believe that pornography is one of those things that destroys the soul of a man. It destroys the temple that God has built. And so, even though
mhm,
there's a lot of things out there to be said about like taking care of your temple, I think that pornography is one of the worst things to impact the temple.
mhm,
Um, and so, as a man, having seen this firsthand, having been a part of the problem, and now being on the other side of it and helping other men to get free from being a part of this problem, like we have to look at this on a global scale. I
mhm,
believe the stats are that there's over like 50% of pastors in the church today that are addicted to pornography
mhm,
actively. And I mean, it doesn't end there. It gets so much worse when we look at the actual statistics.
mhm,
Um, there's like, and I don't know how up to date this is, but I believe it's like 55% of married Christian men and even 25% of married Christian women say that they watch porn at least once a month. And there's so
mhm,
many other stats that we could look at that really show us how pervasive this problem is. So I believe that technology, as I mentioned in the very beginning, has been a big contributor to why our world is full of high functioning addicts that don't realize that they're addicted because their
mhm,
addiction is dopamine. Maybe it's not pornography, maybe it's not a hardcore substance, but they are still addicted to ding, and they open their phones every single time. We're so
mhm,
easily programmed and controlled if we're not paying attention, and our free will be stolen from us. But I
mhm,
believe that for men who are addicted to pornography, that the control that has over a civilization, when you have a mass amount of men and now even women that are hypersexualizing the world. You can see it in music and movies and TV. You can see it in advertisements. You can't you can't escape this anymore, and it's terrifying to see how it is influencing the next generation. But it starts with us, and it starts with who we become today. And so I, as a man, I want to help lead other men to become the husbands and fathers that maybe they didn't have, but maybe
mhm,
they know that they want to be for their children what they never had. But how can you do that if you're still stuck in fueling the problem of a hypersexualized society that teaches our children degenerative behaviors and carnality that will never fill their soul like God will? And
mhm,
so this is not just about raising a generation of fathers. Like, yes, this is a main goal. This is a main priority for the company, is to end fatherlessness in the households all around the world. But it's more than that. The way that we actually accomplish that is not just by getting men free from pornography, but it's also by shutting down the pornography industry, and it's by ending human trafficking. And
mhm,
we've done too much of fighting the good fight just to fight a fight because we don't have anything else to do. And our purpose is in turning the gears rather than actually taking actions that end these problems. And so
mhm,
what I want to do is surround myself with a team of people who are on fire for change, who are on fire for real transformation, so that we
mhm,
can end these horrendous acts around the world, and we can help men get free from the crimes against humanity, and we can shut down this industry and be better for ourselves, each other, and for the next generation. Because we have
mhm,
a whole generation of kids right now that are growing up on this technology, that are being infiltrated by governments and large corporations, and even being infiltrated by our neighbors. I mean, so
mhm,
much of sexual abuse happens from friends and family members. It's never the people you don't know, it's
mhm,
always the people you know. And so this is
mhm.
right in our backyards, whether we want to
Yep,
admit it or not.
that's
And I
right.
don't want to be a part of the problem. I want to be a part of the solution. And I
That's
don't know
right.
what side anyone else wants to be on, but I know this: if you're not a part of the solution, then maybe you are a part of the problem, not actively, but by sitting back and doing nothing.
Mhm,
I don't want to be the person who's caught recording a problem. I want to be the person who's seen helping others
mhm,
and who is loving my neighbor, because I love myself enough to know that I care about that person, and
mhm,
I want to do something to help those people. But really, that's like the grand vision of what we're accomplishing long term. But I believe it starts with one man at a time, one individual in every single household who has an impact, a spiritual, emotional, mental, physical impact on his family and who his children are becoming and who they're looking up to say, Dad, are you proud of me? Dad, do you see me? Our children are looking to us for those affirmations and validations of their identity. And in order for us to properly support them to become who God is calling them to be, it starts with us. So my goal is to help all men to get free from pornography and to really live as God is calling them to live, because there's nothing else that will fill that void inside, and there's nothing else that will help you to find and know your true self and why you're really here. Because when you know who you are, you will know why you're here. But when you know whose you are, you will know who you are.
Mm.
And so I believe that connection to God is absolutely vital. It is everything, but it must go beyond just a thought in the head. You know, I don't want to be another intellectual believer.
Mm.
I want to be an action taker. I want to be someone who knows and I believe in my heart and let my actions reflect what I believe. And that's what this is all really about. Like let's get the complete picture here. Let's set a generation on fire for change.
Mm. Well, look, man, let's go, man. Charles got us all fired up today, man. So if somebody's ready to get on this movement with you, man, where should they go?
So the easiest place to connect with me right now, we've got a website in the works, finally, praise God. But right now, the easiest way to connect with me is on my Instagram or on my Facebook. You can contact me at Freedom Worker Charles. That is one word, Freedom Worker Charles on Instagram or Facebook. And for anyone who has an addiction that they need help with, then reach out to me with the word GSL, and I'll know exactly where you came from. And I've got a free gift for you. It's my pattern identification exercise, where I will help you identify the root of your addiction and give you the next steps that you can take in order to start getting free today. So message me GSL, and I've got that free gift for you.
Awesome, man. Well, Charles, you're definitely welcome back anytime, man. I feel like you might even have way more stuff to share with us, but I know we just got to end at some point. But
Yep,
like I said, come on back anytime. Come back and share about, again, the amazing things that you guys are doing. Because I know, I mean, like I said, you got me fired up right now. Like, what we gonna do for the women's side? Let me see what I can come over there and do. You know what I'm saying? I'll punch out some demons. You know what I'm saying? We
absolutely. It's
gotta
in the
see.
works.
Yeah, we gotta see what we can do. But yeah, is there anything else you would like to share with us before you go?
Yeah, I always love to end shows with this, and it's a piece of encouragement that I give to my clients all the time. The speed, and your future doesn't happen at the speed of time. Your future does not happen at the speed of time. It happens at the speed of your decisions. So if
Mm.
you're looking for change in your life, don't wait for change. Make the change, and you will start to see change happen.
Let's go. He done dropped the mic. That's it. Charles, like I said, man, I appreciate you coming tonight. I really do.
Absolutely. So glad to be here. Thank you for having me on, Miracle.
Wishing I would have a one night affair.
Thank you so much for watching the GSL Talk Show, and thank you to Charles for joining us tonight. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and check out Mr. Charles's movement. Let's fight these porn demons, one demon at a time. And look, I don't know how we're going to collaborate. We're going to figure some things out, so be on the lookout for that stuff too. Have a good night.